thanks again for discussing. I'm hoping that all of the questions were kind of, they kind of got your head churning, and you kind of thought about this. I think that the biggest thing is kind of knowing what unintentional sin is, and I know that when I went around the room, there was still a little bit of confusion around that. So I want to talk about that just a little bit more. So to that end, I'm going to give an example. So, like, let's say you use your phone, right? Use your phone. Like, everyone has a phone. Everyone uses a phone. You instinctively know what you have to do in order to look at an app or respond to one of your friends, right? So you have to pull out your phone. You have to unlock your phone, whether it be by your face or passcode, whatever. You have to view the notification, bring up the application, bring up the messaging system, respond, and what do you do at the end? You turn off the screen, right, to save your battery. So all of this is kind of deeply ingrained in your mind. It's automatic because you do it so many times, right? It's just like secondhand nature to you, and all those neurons in your brain are firing off, and they're saying, okay, do this, now move on to this, boom, boom, boom. And I don't know if how many of you guys are coders or do any coding, but what do you do when you script, right? You go from one thing to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next. You just continue on. Like, that's like the crux of scripting, Python scripting, right? It makes your life easier. It's automatic. And so whether or not you've taught yourself to do that or someone taught you to do that, it's deeply ingrained inside of you. And that's what I'm trying to get at, because this unintentional sin is something that is just so deeply ingrained that it's almost an automatic response pattern by you. And so it's involuntary, and you perform that action though anyway, right? Because technically speaking, when you bring out that phone, you're still doing the actions, right? That's you performing all of it. It's not like you're a robot and it's just automatic and you're just like, well, I don't have to do this because it's already being done for me. You still perform that action even though you feel it's second nature. It's still in your mind and you're still doing it subconsciously. And so why do I bring this up, right? Because Scripture speaks about involuntary sins as having three characteristics. They are, one, from the ignorance of God's will, and therefore, two, not deliberately chosen as hostile acts against God, but they are, three, disobedience nonetheless. So even though you didn't intend to do that, you still bear the weight of performing that sin, and that is an act against God, even if you didn't intend for it. And so you kind of have to ask yourself, where does that unintentional sin come from? So anyone can talk about that. Where does it come from? Where do you guys think it comes from? If it's so deeply ingrained, what do you think? I see Urs pointing at something. Yeah. I like it. Well, where do you think it comes from? And you were pointing to something directly, right?
Yeah, heart.
It comes from your heart. So let's actually get it clear, though, right? Because a lot of people will mistakenly say the anatomy of the heart is like, oh, it's not actually your, what makes you perform the action, blah, blah, blah. And they try to deny Christianity because of that. But actually, in the Bible, when it does talk about the heart, it talks more about the mindset and where it comes from in your mind. It's not necessarily the anatomical heart. It's more of from within, just like kind of like what you're alluding to, kind of what you're saying. It's that frame of mind, that mindset that it comes from. And so when you sin unintentionally, it's still a heart response. And that is where it comes from. Because I explained to these guys in this table, they liked or didn't like my little waterfall example, right? So like, let's say you're on vacation and you're with your family, and the intention of a vacation is to have fun. It's to go with your family, spend time with them, get closer to them, hopefully get closer to God, and enjoy yourselves, right? But what happens when your dad says, hey, it's 6 a.m., wake up, we got to go and see this waterfall, we got to see this Pearl Harbor, we got to see this, that, blah, blah, and your dad is just like going super intense on you, and you're just like, Dad, I just want to sleep. I honestly just want to sleep, you know? And he's like, nah, we got to get up. You can sleep in the car, you know? And he's just excited. Or your mom, or your brother, or your sister, you know, says that. What's going to happen? The intensity doesn't match. The wavelength does not match. And you guys might get into an argument. And so the intention of the vacation is to be restful and to have fun. But the unintentional response of you and your sibling or your parents is to get mad at each other and fight. And this happens all the time on vacations, right? Like, you guys see it all the time? I see it all the time, right? And so that is an unintentional consequence of the sin. Because your heart response, kind of like what Bobby was saying earlier today, you know, he said, your intention is still wrong, right? Because you should act out of grace and kindness towards your family members. But at that moment, the heat of the moment, you're just like, well, I want to do what's good for me. I want to be selfish right now. And I'm going to get mad because you're being, in my mind, ungrateful, unreliable. You know, you're not seeing it my way. You don't see my perspective. And so you act out of sin. And that's why, if you go to Matthew 12:34, let's actually turn there. Jordan, can you read that for us? Yeah. Matthew 12:34. You'll see why exactly it comes from the deep recesses of your heart. Yep. Yeah.
You brood of vipers, how can you who are evil say anything good? For out of the overflow of the heart the mouth speaks.
Thank you. So, this is Jesus talking to the Pharisees, right? And he's saying, you guys respond with what is in your heart, right? That is the deepest recesses of your heart. And so, when you think about that, the Jews, when they willingly killed Jesus, did they willingly kill Jesus because they knew that he was God? Or did they kill Jesus because they thought he was a liar? What do you guys think? What do we know of the Pharisees? What do we know of the Jews that, plotted against Jesus? What did they think of Jesus? Did they think he was God? Anyone can answer this. Anyone? Enoch, what do you think?
No.
They didn't know he was Jesus, or they didn't know he was God, did they? They just thought he's just some random guy he's claiming to be God, right? So is that an unintentional or an intentional sin? What do you think? You could just be honest. Sorry?
Unintentional.
Exactly. It is unintentional because it was not a deliberate act against God, yet they still sinned. They still murdered him. They didn't think he was God. They thought he was an affront to God, but in that, they still sinned. So that is an unintentional sin. Exactly. Good job. And so, I guess what I'm getting at is, I want you guys to think about this because it really is something that's hard to combat. When you actually, when you read James 2:1, it talks about partiality. You have to think to yourself, do I treat my friends better than some random guy in the street, right? The answer usually is going to be yes, because you're more familiar with your friends, right? When you go out and you get the last snack, you're more likely going to give it to your friend than to some random guy that was in line for like 40 minutes too, right? Everyone was in line, but what's fair, right? You're probably going to be like, well, it's fair for me to get it, or it's fair for my friend to get it, and I share with them, versus this random person. But James 2:1, not supposed to show partiality, right? And so I'm not saying that it's a bad thing not to give away what you have, or to keep what you have. To keep what you have. But you have to think about why you're doing the things you're doing within your heart. You know, if it is just to gain favor with that friend, or it is to gain favor from someone else, then that's usually probably wrong because you have an ulterior motive. But if it's just really to give them joy, to give them grace, then that is a good thing. And so, yeah, you know, same thing with jealousy, same thing with coveting. These kinds of things are not really what you're going to kind of realize at the moment that you're doing these things. And so it really does come from a heart response. And the reason why I gave you that example of a cell phone and you performing those actions to the point it's automatic is because I want you guys to make that automatic response to give graciousness. If you can train yourself to give grace, even in suboptimal circumstances, you'll continue to do that, and it'll train you in your response. Are you going to be perfect? No one's going to be perfect, right? But at the very least, you'll get more A's than you get C's, right? And so it's an onward and upward trajectory for sanctification. So yeah, I think that is what I'll leave off with. Hopefully that's just good food for thought. And yeah, I'll close this in prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for this day. Thank you that we can just come to know more about your word, come to learn about how you deal gently with all sinners, all kinds of sinners, not just, premeditated murder, not just people that decide that they're going to hurt someone already, but also with people that have unintentionally sinned and accidentally done so, and acted out of instinct or impulse. Thank you that we're able to change these impulses, Lord, by your grace and your foundational wisdom. I pray that we just continue to think about your word each and every day, and that we incorporate it into our daily lives, and that people will see that in our lives and glorify you for that. Praise on your name. Amen.